let me just have a few more words here. Let me say that one of the things that I observed here and was very pleased to see was a large number of young people, and apparently reports we're getting from everywhere are the fact that the candidate agents who were there, the candidates themselves, the voters were young. Of course, most of the country was young. But just the same, this was very obvious. And the number of women candidates, over 400 women candidates, I think that it's higher than last time, and this too represents a positive development. Wherever we went, and this was true in the provinces as well as in Kabul, there were posters just about totally dominating the landscape, the urban landscape. It was something far beyond anything we've ever seen in this country. And a lot of these were expensive to put up because not that the posters themselves were expensive, they were enormous, but just you had to rent the space. And so they were evidently willing to put their own money into it. Okay, in concluding here, let me say that there was, therefore, a great deal of enthusiasm about this election, in spite of everything, at least certainly in the urban centers and perhaps in some other areas as well. People are better positioned to talk about that, and I hope they will. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. A large part of it ultimately depends on people's own experience. And are they going to go through this election, which is the second parliamentary election, and they voted in 2 presidential elections, and voting participation is dropping. Are they going to come out of this now being turning away, really, from the democratic process? Is an election like this, and many people will argue this, an election like this is going to turn people off from the democratic process, and it's going to reinforce the fact that so many of them are ambivalent about where their loyalties will lie in the future. Or did this election demonstrate a resiliency on the part of the Afghans, that in spite of everything, they were willing to turn out, they were willing to put themselves up as candidates, because in so much of the country this was dangerous. Even in Kabul, the expectation in Kabul is that there would be major violence. Fortunately, as it turned out, there was practically none. Kabul province, despite all of the security threats that we were made aware of, had no major incidents. And although the level of violence across the country is greater than it was last year, nothing spectacular. What does that demonstrate? There are a number of interpretations. So let me stop and turn to Caroline.
Thank you so much, Marvin. Caroline.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much to the Middle East Institute, and especially to Marvin. Okay, to Marvin, who invited me here today, and who I have greatly enjoyed getting to know over the years, both in my work in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and as an election observer. I constantly learn from Marvin, and I appreciate being given this opportunity. I want to start off with just with sharing an interview that I had with a parliamentary candidate before the election, because I feel like it captures sort of the fog of the war and the fog of this election process, and how complicated it is. And a day before the election, 2 days before the election, we were deployed all over the country. I went to Balkh province and to Mazar-e-Sharif, which is one of the major cities in Afghanistan. And I met with a number of people before the elections actually took place. One of the interviews I had was with a parliamentary candidate who was Tajik, but was reluctant to share his ethnicity because he really was trying to reach beyond his own ethnic group. He had a message of peace. He had a message of unity among different ethnic groups. He He wanted to see Afghanistan become a better country. He was very inspirational with his message. And he was someone who didn't have a lot of money. He felt frustrated by feeling that the playing field was not level in these elections, that the rich and powerful were going to win, but he was still participating. And he had also experienced a number of threats and felt that he had to largely stay in his house because he might be killed if he left. And so he was really quite inspiring to me. And at the same time, in the middle of our conversation, he turned to me and said, "I know who you are." And I stopped. I waited to figure out who I actually was, who he thought I was. And he said, your country started the Taliban. And we know that you are moving troops from the south to the north to have the insurgency spread. And I tried to argue a little bit, but that was clearly a message that was shared. There was great suspicion, and so then the next question was, well, what do you think we should do? What do you think what should the U.S. do about this election or beyond? And he said, you need to stay. We need outsiders to help us bring peace. We can't do it by ourselves. So that sort of, for me, captured how difficult the situation was and all of the mixed messages that we got. On election day itself, as Marvin indicated, it was very impressive. There were tons of voters at the polls. Everything, the process, at least in Balkh and in Afghanistan province, where I also traveled, everything was in its proper place. It was orderly. There were male and female voters. It was quite a festive atmosphere. It appeared that the screens were set up in the proper places so that people could vote anonymously. There were candidate agents in the polling station, which indicated that there was. It was hard to know exactly what it meant, but there was involvement by a number of Afghans in the process, and so the process was quite inspiring. But at the same time, as an election observer, you don't know what you're seeing in a lot of ways. There were so many allegations, which we heard beforehand and then after in the news, of vote buying, extra voter registration cards, intimidation and violence, ballot box stuffing. It was very difficult to know what we had seen when we came into a polling station. Was there a performance going on, or was there actually a process that was continuing a clean process? In Balkh province, we definitely heard of a lot of concerns both before and after. And I think, as Marvin indicated, what was clear was that there was corruption and fraud. It might have been more at the localized level versus a top-down from Karzai kind of intervention.